training barbershop and they take a shear to your head like you are
Like a lamb.
like seriously, it's just like they hold you down and just go
Whack, whack, whack.
but,
Oh, Jesus.
and God forbid you have a mole that you don't know about because
Oh, God.
it happened. There was the guy in front of me didn't know that it was on his scalp, and it was just like
Just
it was it was not pretty. It was not pretty.
Dude, that's great.
Yeah. So
And for folks that don't know you or don't know where you came from and where you are now, can you just run us through what your life looked like for the past 10 or 15 years and what it looks like now?
oh man, well, like many classical singers out there, right, or classical singers, any professional singers out there, I went through the university system. I got my bachelor's and master's in music, in performance, and then did a young artist program down at Fort Worth Opera. And then after that, I was, for about 7 years, I was just a free agent out on the opera scene. I was very lucky to, land a spot in Ana de Archuleta's roster right out of that young artist program. So I hit the ground running and lived the opera nomad life for several years. And after things started getting hard after probably year 5 or 6 for me. And it wasn't even, every singer experiences the peaks and valleys of having work and not having work. So I experienced a fair bit of some valleys, but what I discovered over those 5 or 6 years was just like the lifestyle just didn't fit me. Sort of the elemental Ian. Like I loved performing. I love performing. I love telling stories with music and on stage. And that's like, my mom loves to tell the story that when I was 7 years old, I turned to her and said, "Mom, my music is my life." And that has always been true. But just the lifestyle of picking up and going to this city and sort of not ever feeling like I had roots began to just wear away at me a little bit. Even after just those 5 years, I decided that I wanted to broaden my scope a little bit, from just opera. But anyway, so I started to broaden my scope, and that led me to doing musical theater with theaters here in town, that Signature Theater in Virginia. And I just started looking at other opportunities. I did some voiceover work. I did a commercial, like on-camera commercial. And one day I was cruising. It was either Backstage.com or Yap Tracker. I can't even remember. And I saw listing for the Army singing job. The Navy. Sorry, the Navy, the sea chanters. I didn't see the Army first. I went out for the sea chanters in the Navy because I read this job description and it said, we perform classical music, ticks a box. We perform musical theater. We perform rock. We perform pop. And I don't even know if you know this, but the first singing that I ever did was in a heavy metal band.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, my roots, my music taste and singing experience are equally eclectic.
Yeah.
So
we definitely understand each other there, brother.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the most amazing moments also in my performing career was, sitting at that cast party in Atlanta at Tomer's place when y'all just pulled out the banjos and guitars and just started a jam session. I was just like sitting in the corner like, man, I wish I knew country music because this is just amazing. Just like that sort of organic performing or, collective musical experience was just great. But anyway, I saw this job and I saw not only would I be able to serve the sort of multifaceted nature of my own musical taste and performing desires, which are so hard to be served in a traditional operatic career. Like it's so hard to be a crossover artist or to have these multiple facets represented in your own.
There's not a lot of space for that. We're trying to do better these days, but there's just not.
So I saw this job and I was like, not only do I get to be me musically, or would I be able to be me musically, but salary,
benefits,
4-day
work week.
And if you stick around, retirement.
What?
Like
What's
these are things.
that?
These are things that I never imagined would be possible in my
Yeah.
career. I went out for the audition, didn't get it, but I had a friend in the group, an old friend that we did all state chorus with in Maryland way back in the day, and I was like, oh my god, you're in the Sea Changers. I'm
What was
auditioning.
the What was the audition like for that?
That one was actually a blind audition. You went in and you were behind a curtain, but I'll back up. You had a pre-screening, just like any opera young artist program. You had to
Yeah.
send in a classical piece, a popular idiom piece, whether that be jazz or country, or I did a pop musical theater thing, then a legit musical theater and a national anthem. And they invited auditioners from those submissions, and you go in and you get to pick your first piece. You sing behind a curtain, and then they pick one or two more pieces. Then they throw some sight reading at you, and I got cut after the sight reading.
Was it hard sight reading?
It was tricky. It was not like they threw an actual piece of music at you. It was like legit, like just notes, and they said you can sing on solfege, you can sing on la la la, you can sing whatever,
Oh.
but it had like a tritone right off the bat, and I was like, yeah, Maria. No. But my buddy in the group was like, you're not right for this right now, but you would be great for one of these military jobs. I know the Army is going to have a spot opening up, so you should watch out for that listing and go out for it. I went out for it when it came up. I went in there, and that audition, talk about, it was the longest audition day of my life. Because you come in before you have to be on base like 7:30 to get through security, to make your pianist rehearsal time before 9, at least for me. Yeah. It's like they start testing you right off the bat.
Yeah. Can you get up early?
Because that's, as I'll get to, is definitely a thing in the military. But then they had one round where I sang one piece. All the people sang one piece. They made some cuts. They came back and asked us for one or two more pieces. Then they made more cuts. Then they threw us into small groups from the ensemble with prepared choral music that they sent beforehand for us to prepare ahead of time.
Yeah.
To sing with the ensemble, to see if we could learn the pieces assigned to us. They made more cuts. They threw a quick study piece at us, which was a German piece. I can't remember if it was Schubert or Schumann. I think it was Schumann. But I was like, I got this. I went into, it was in German. Like, I love singing in German. I went into the practice room, plunked out the notes. I was like, oh, it's tricky in that one spot, but I got
this.
So I went back in there, and after that section they made more cuts, and after that they only had me come back in and sing with the second tenor section specifically just one more time, because they wanted to make sure, I think. And then they had an interview section with just two of us. The other guy was named Ian as well, and he got the first tenor spot, I got the second tenor spot.
Nice.
So we were there. God, I was there until 4 or 5. Yeah, it was early morning work day. Wow. Yeah, but it was also like one of the best audition experiences I've ever had. These guys, they're all in uniform, but they immediately made us all feel welcome. In my interview, we just started, talking about what video games we play and like what our hobbies are. I immediately felt like I could fit in with this community of guys.
Yeah. So you jumped right, like you got the job, and it's that thing I think that we all miss. I mean, it must have been exciting to contemplate being a part of a community again, and like having like buddies, buddies that you see at work every day.
That you see at work, yes. No, and that was absolutely part of it, because like I love the friendships that I've made in opera and musical theater. Like there are a handful of friendships that like have really stood the test of time, but you don't see each other very often.
Friendships take maintenance. Period.
Yeah.
Period. So, dude, you went. You nailed the audition, and then they're like, "You got the job if you want it." So then you have to make a decision. Do I want to? And it was for the Army, right?
This is for the Army. Yeah.
So you got to be like, okay, am I going to join the fucking Army?
Well, yeah. Well,
Because I would be so, because there's all these stereotypes and things that you hear about. So I would be so like, oh, goddamn, what am I doing? Because I would be literally scared, especially like, I'm 44, and you're in your mid 30s.
Yeah, I'm in my
So
33 now. I'm
jumping
33, yeah.
jumping into that whole machine that's built to break down 18-year-olds and turn them into men, and you're 35.
I went in 30. Well, I went in at 32, and no, well, there were several steps to that whole
Look what
all
your voice
the
does.
mental gymnastics that happened.
Yeah.
Because when I first went out for the Navy job, that's when I had all the hard conversations with my ex hippie parents, being like, "I'm thinking about joining the military." What? You're gonna get yourself killed? Like, yeah.
I may get nodes. The worst thing that can happen.
But I had to sort of tell them that I'm thinking about this job and after I didn't get it, like this is still an option. It's still on the table.
Yeah.
Like I'm still going to be trying for these things because I really believe that it could be a fit for me. And of course, I had to think about like, am I too old for this stuff, or is this right for me? Are all the sort of things that you don't think about?
Yeah.
Like salaried singing job, what like basic training, like the sort of being part of a very big machine, the structure, which was another thing about the lifestyle of opera, is like I never felt like I had structure, so I was like, oh, their structure would be there in a military job.
I don't have to think so much. It's nice.
That's the thing, but like
I don't have to think about all the tiny details and shit that's taken care of. It's done.
Just follow orders. But would it be too much structure? Would it be too rigid? Like these were all things that I had to ask myself. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought that like, I am pretty adaptable, and the pros still outweigh the possible cons. And by the time I went to the Army audition, I had already had all those conversations with Allie, with my parents, and with myself to be like, am I sure this is something I want? And that's when they offered me the job on the audition day. I was like, hell yes. Like, I didn't just skip a beat. I was like, I will take the punishment, because I had other friends that were in the Army ensemble as well, friends that I did Aspen with years ago, and friends that I went to CCM with. And I asked them, I was like, how do you feel? And one of them told me, like, as hard as basic was, and as hard as all adjusting was, like I would go through it all again, because of not only the fact that this job is security financially, and being being able to set down roots, but also the job is just so fun and you're never bored, musically speaking, like that it's absolutely worth it.
So you went and you made the decision, you jumped in. So then the next step, I guess, was I'm sure you have to have orientation. They tell you how to do stuff, but then you got to go to basic training.
Yes.
Which, man, it would just kill me. They'd be like, he's out. You can't make it.
Well,
like my buddy who's in the Air Force band.
Oh, yeah.
His name's Adam Green. He's a percussionist in that.
Nice.
And he was like, before I got to basic training, they told me, don't tell your drill sergeant that you're there with the band, because you have a master's degree. And when you as soon as you get through basic training, you're going to outrank your drill sergeant. And if they find out, they're going to give you a hell of a time before you get there. So what was it like for a dude? You're mid 30s. You're out there training with kids, man, like kids who are way better, like just suited for this thing, and the whole system is designed for them. So what was that experience like, Ian?
Well, let me collect my thoughts. So let's talk about the timeline here for just a second, because I got the job in February, right before everything exploded, right before COVID went bananagrams everywhere.
Impeccable timing, by the way, Ian.
Well,
you couldn't have made a better decision if you.
Some of my friends were like, "Did you know?
Bitch.
Did you know? Like, this was very prescient of you, McEuen." No, I got the job in February, and I had a whole bunch of gigs lined up. So when I signed on the dotted line, I was like, hey, I have contracts I can't ship until August.
Mm-hmm.
This is before COVID hit. So then everything got canceled. So I had just this desert of time with nothing on my plate except basic at the end of summer. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I'm going to put my body through the ringer. I'm going to start a military specific military fitness program so that I can go into basic knowing that I'm not going to be destroyed. Like completely destroyed. Like they destroy you. They find a way, but not like
No matter how prepared you are, they'll find, oh, that's we'll get him
well,
this way.
because it's all about, they push you to your personal limit,
Yeah.
that and it's not, we'll get to that. But so I actually was incredibly lucky that I had, months to I was never a runner and I was like we're going to be rucking 12 miles with 50 pounds on our back. I better start cardio.
Yeah.
I was just a lifter beforehand. I did some CrossFit, but I never did endurance, and I had to
Right.
get that new physical skill going. So going to basic as a 33-year-old, a 32-year-old, I was not the oldest in my platoon or company, because that's when you go to basic, you're part of a platoon, which is part of there are 4 platoons per company. I was not the oldest, and I was much fitter than some of the 18-year-olds, man. I gave those young bucks run for their money. I did.
The drill sergeant, like, look at that old son of a bitch kicking your ass.
Wait, literally, he's like, this guy's 32 and he's running faster than you. He's doing more push-ups. But you mentioned the whole thing about the situation where you get out of basic and you within a month are either the same rank as or higher rank than some of your drill sergeants. I got lucky because my senior drill sergeant found out very quickly, because he asks all of us what our MOS, which is the mode of service, like what your Army job is. And I was like 42 Sierra, and he was like, what the hell is that? I was like, the Army chorus. And
choir.
Like, you're going into the band. Okay. And immediately I was like, oh God, no, it's happening. But it turns out that my senior drill sergeant grew up in Texas, singing in choirs his whole upbringing.
Yeah.
So he thought it was cool. My male drill sergeant would call me up and just like ask me questions about opera. So I actually got very lucky in that regard, that I was not punished for my future job in the military.
Yeah. What was a typical day like when you going through basic training?
So you would get the night before, you would get wake up time, which you quickly learn is not when you're supposed to wake up. It's when the drill sergeant walks into the bay, into the sleeping area, and you need to be like, everybody needs to be up and dressed and cleaning, especially because of COVID time. Like,
yeah.
I'll do the typical day, then I can talk about what COVID basic training is kind of like. But so you get a wake up time, which is often 4:30 a.m., 4:30 or 5, because first formation would be 5:15 or 5:30. So we would usually wake up at 4 or 4:15 in the morning to brush our teeth, start sweeping the bay, just to make sure that it wasn't dirty when the drill sergeant showed up, or at least that we were visibly in the act of making it less dirty.
Yeah.
So then we'd get downstairs on our platoon lines by 5:15 or 5:30. We would do, depending on what phase we were in, if we had weapons, we would do a personnel count and weapons count. If we didn't have weapons, we wouldn't do the weapons count. A few weeks in, like, we always had weapons because we were always either going to the range or rucking with, to simulate if we were, doing combat maneuvers, we would have a weapon. Accountability. We would check all the people who were there. If people weren't there, if they were at sick call, or if they were, wherever they were, we would know where they were. So we'd be able to report to the drill sergeants that all people were accounted for and all weapons were accounted for. Because if a weapon went missing, very bad. Yeah. For all the obvious reasons. So I won't even talk about that. But then we do PT, which would, depending on how slow we were to get going in the morning or how many mistakes we made first thing in the morning, PT would start early. We would go off to either do a run workout, or we would stay in the platoon area and do like a circuit training with kettlebells and weights and whatnot. Whatever the drill sergeant decided was physical training for that day, we'd do that. Then breakfast chow would be between 7 and 7:30, depending on when we finished PT. Then after breakfast chow, we'd clean up and we'd start training, whatever was on the docket for the day, whether it was going to the range, whether it was doing land navigation, whether it was going to a classroom and learning about the EO, equal opportunity, or SHARP, sexual harassment, assault prevention stuff, learning the regulations and stuff. We would go do that training. Lunch chow would be around noon. We'd go back to training, or we would be sent to clean the bays or clean any number of areas around
Always so much cleaning.
this constant. Then dinner chow would be around between 5 and 6, maybe 7 if we were really if the day got totally screwed up and we had to be late. And then lights out would be at 8 p.m.
Yeah, it's basically just shifting your time, your sleeping time this way.
Yeah, wait, and
But I imagine by 8 o'clock you weren't too resistant for sleep at that point because it sounds like that's a pretty full day.
well, and in between, like I say training, but like any number of things could happen that we would get effed up for. The front leaning, people think it's drop and give me 20. No, it's front leaning rest position move. Front leaning rest position is the top of a push-up.
Oh geez.
So they'd be front leaning rest position move 1 2, and we'd get down into a high plank, and they just might leave us there for 10 to 15 minutes, or we might do 20 push-ups, and then they'd have us get into a different position and do some other PT exercise that we learned, whether it was a core destroyer, or they tell us to squat and hold that for a good minute, but these were all, because someone either individually or as a group made a mistake.
What's the worst story or the funniest story you have from basic training?
Well, thinking about being effed up, the worst time was, I can't remember what happened, but this is my personal worst, that we got effed up right as it started to rain. One of the drill sergeants sent us out. There was a hill right behind our company, right? There's a hill up to a big, like, sort of plateau where a lot of training would happen. He told us to go out on the hill and get into, sit-up position, down the hill where our head was, lower. So we'd have to do sit-ups on an incline. But the hill was covered in goose poop.
Oh, good.
And he didn't care. And of course, because it was raining, it got fragrance, and also we were just progressively sliding down the hill because no one was holding your legs. You just were doing sit-ups and sliding down in goose poop. Then you have to go back up, slide down in goose poop.
Oh God.
That was the worst. But I think the worst time when the whole platoon got collectively effed up was that a group of guys decided it would be a super great idea.
Oh no.
To steal an entire box of MREs because the storage closet was wide open for like 5 minutes. They stole a box of MREs and hid it. And once the drill sergeant saw that one was missing, it was like scorched earth. We were like, they just screwed up the entire company until whoever did it came forward. And they eventually did. Like, good on them for, integrity is an important Army value, and they, it's one of the things that they preach very hard at basic. And finally these guys came forward, but not after, it was like 45 minutes of various exercises.
Oh, I'll bet they caught hell after this was over.
But from
the other guys. Was there any bars of soap and socks or any of that stuff going on?
No. But I think they got at least a hit to their pay, because that's the punishments in the Army. There's Article 15, which is they can take your time, they can take your money as punishment. So I think that's what happened with them. But yeah, that was a bad day.
So you blew through. By the time you got to the end of basic training, did you notice that you had changed some modes of thinking of your, like, was it like, I'll just do this bullshit and get to my singing job, or were you like, oh, some of this is kind of sinking in a little bit. You know, do you make your bed every day now? Like even if you're at home?
When Allie doesn't get to it first, I do automatically do hospital corners. Like that's
Yeah.
a thing I never thought I'd do in my life, but like I do the pristine 45-degree angle hospital corners where like if you can't get your foot to the bottom of the bed. No, one of the things that saved me because basic was really hard. It was really hard. I got the physical side like I manageable, like I could get through all the physical challenges that they threw at me, but it was more the mental stuff that being away from Allie, being away from home, and being in this environment where I was just way more grown up than most of the people around me. But one of the things that saved me was that going into it thinking about playing a role and knowing that the drill sergeants, they're playing a role. If
Yeah.
I show up and I know my lines, I know my music, I know my national anthem and my army song, because Lord knows they made me sing that a lot. I went into it knowing that I'm doing this for this job, and I gotta play the role. But of course, like there were things that as I went through the process that aligned with my own personal morals and stuff, like the army values. I believe in those.
Yeah.
That they preach those really hard. I believe that those are really core values that anybody and everybody should at least think about embracing. I wouldn't say that it changed the way that I think or anything. It didn't change anything that I believe, except it sort of reinforced. I'd never played a team sport, and this really in my life, and this was the first real team
Hey,
sport.
now that's significant, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big shift, brother.
Yeah. So, and I ended up in a leadership position. They have a student government for every platoon. They have a platoon guide and an assistant platoon guide, which are sort of like as the drill sergeants loosen the leash a little bit, they give orders to those two people, and then those two people sort of get the platoon in line, so to speak. And I was I was APG for most of the time that I was there, and I graduated with a lot of them got fired, but I didn't get fired.
Oh no.
It really opera is a team sport. You learn how to be a team player in theater or opera, but this really reinforced all of that to the nth degree for me, like that you have to be
It's an incredible leveler, isn't it? Because everybody is at the same. In there's a lot of hierarchy in the military, but in opera, at least in the military, it's explicit.
Yeah, like there's a
In the
rank
arts,
on
it's
their
just
chest.
whatever. It's bullshit.
One, sometimes you don't know like
Yeah.
who's really in charge here.
Yeah, yeah,
You don't wonder that in the military.
yeah.
But at basic training is really the first time that I experienced having a big team with people that were really all on different levels.
Yeah.
Like there were people. There's one female. It's one of the things that is stuck with me from basic is like when you're there, like there are males and there are females.
Oh,
And
right.
it's just how you
No. Yeah.
just how you-
That wouldn't go over so well at the Antifa meeting. But
no. Jesus, no. Not really. No.
all you females, listen up. Oh shit.
No, my pronouns are he, him. But my apologies for just that's how I will.
No
refer to
apologies, dude.
people.
You're a military dude, man. And look, it's actually pretty fucking insightful, and it's good that we actually see that. So when we hear that, we're not like, take it easy, take it easy.
Yeah. It's just how because we're always separated until we're like training and stuff. There's all the males have their sleeping areas and the females have their sleeping areas. Then we integrate for training, but like stay separate because they sharp is a very very big thing.
Yep, I imagine.
And as it should be.
So there was this guy. There's this. He said that
There's this one female.
Yeah.
There was one female who was really, really struggling with the PT stuff, with the physical training. Like at the end, we knew that at the end of the cycle, we had the ACFT, which is the military's new Army Combat Fitness Test. The APFT was the previous physical test, which was just max push-ups in a certain amount of time, max sit-ups in a certain amount of time, and then a 2-mile run. That's it. But now we have max weight 3 rep deadlift, standing power throw, which is a overhead medicine ball throw. With the sprint drag carry, which is murderous. You have to, you get down into prone position and then you have to sprint back and forth 500 meters, carry kettlebells. I'm going to do it out of order because I can't remember the order, but 45-pound kettlebells, 500 meters and back, drag a 90-pound sled, 500 meters down and back, lateral run down and back, and then sprint down and back again.
Oh my God.
Just like
my body hurts. God dang. I would have a heart attack and die. At 35, I would have just dead.
Dude, in cycles previous to ours, when it was hotter than it was towards the end of, we were in October by this point. There were people that heat catted that had heat seizure.
Whoa, man.
On the ACFT field. But anyway, and then you have to do hand release push-ups, which is 1 rep is you start down, up, down, arms out and back and up. Geez. That's 1 rep. Max those in 1 minute or 2 minutes. Then leg tucks maximum, which is a special kind of pull up where you have your arms like this and you pull up and pull your knees into your elbows. Which a lot of people couldn't even do one. And that's the thing about the ACFT is that it's easier to pass. You only have to do 1 to pass, but it's harder than the APFT, the previous one, to max out.
Yeah.
Because the max numbers go way high. And then after all of that, you have to do a 2-mile run.
Yeah. Wow.
For time. And
so you can't just lollygag.
No. There's the minimum time is like 22 minutes. So again, like that's 22
not
something.
A lot of time.
Well, but honestly,
after doing all that shit, dude.
The drill. I mean, yeah, after doing all that multiple CrossFit workouts in tandem, it's really hard to do that. But this girl was struggling with the run without any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And the drill sergeant was like, you can walk that fast, which is like, you really have to power walk, but she failed the run multiple times throughout the cycle. And even at the final ACFT, which is like the graduation is in less than a week, you need to pass this. PG and APG were sent down to run with her 2 days later for her retest. And that was the first time that, like, as a team member or leader, that I like went to the person who was struggling the most and was tasked with motivating them to finish and pass this task.
Wow.
I'd never experienced anything like that. And it was humbling, and it made me learn a lot about. I've always been an empathic person, to be an actor or singer, like it's kind of a requirement. Mm-hmm. But this was a new experience for empath Ian, seeing this person who was really struggling and trying to think from their perspective and see what could literally get them across the finish line. Mm-hmm. But, there were experiences throughout the time when there were people that were struggling that, as someone who has a master's degree and who has been through a lot more education than a lot of these people, that I was either specifically tasked with or took it upon myself to be like, hey man, how can I help you with this? Whether it was, I got pretty proficient in the first aid and medical stuff. So I was sent to help people that were struggling with that and land navigation as well. And like,
you're learning a tremendous amount of skills in a short amount of time.
Very short amount of time.
And there's skills that probably are pretty second nature to just a certain generation, but millennials, they don't read maps because they have.
And I didn't. That was something that I like, and the way that our military land navigation is a very sort of specific methodology,
right?
That I had to learn. And luckily, I was crazy and like studied ahead of basic to get a leg up.
Of course you did.
Because I have a horrible sense of direction. You don't know this about me, Mike. But like if everyone's hanging out and they're like, yeah, where's this bar? And
let's go west.
And it's usually the opposite direction. From
people always give me directions. You're like, well, you turn west, and I'm like, turn west. Do I have to look at the sun to figure that out? I don't know what the hell west. It's cloudy today.
There's no trees with moss. I can't even do that trick, like. But in any case, this was my first real like team sport where experience where like people were on wildly different levels, wildly different maturity levels, mentally, physically, emotionally.
Yeah.
And that was, there were times when there were young guys that were having real trouble emotionally.
Yeah.
They were away from their families for the first
First
time.
time.
None of us had phones, so none of us could communicate with our family. But I had at least done the long distance thing
Yeah.
with Allie and with my family because of the
And how,
opera.
but how long is it? About 12 weeks or something?
10 weeks.
10 weeks. So 10 weeks. That's a long stretch, but it's not the longest we've ever done.
No, but it feels longer just because you're completely cut off.
Yeah. You're cut off, and your entire system of living and operating is completely different.
Yeah.
It must feel pretty fucking lonely at the beginning.
And then that's why
Make a lot of good friends in there.
I made a handful of friends that I am still close with, and I believe I will remain close with, because like once you get past the first few weeks of just sort of terror and just like trying to get through each day, and you get smidgens of free time and you start talking with these guys, like there's this one guy that I think is so cool. He's an 18-year-old guy who played football and wrestled and was a strongman, like amateur strongman, but he also like loves to bake bread. And that's one of my hobbies. And if anybody who sees my Instagram, like I'm always baking sourdough bread, and we hit it off because not only does that, but this guy's also like an amateur blacksmith. So like he like showed me drawings of like the swords that he designed, and I was like, you are so cool. Find these things out about people eventually, and really find that you have more in common than you expect.
Yeah. Well, there must have been a tremendous sense of accomplishment coming out of that, and then because I can only imagine that it might be similar to going through a really difficult rehearsal process and then getting through the run of shows, and then finally, it's over. And I imagine, as glad as you were for it to be over, there must have been a little bit of sadness, like, oh, I'm shifting out of this reality, and I'm so used to this, and now I'm going into this whole new situation, which I'm sure was completely different.
So what I always Allie and I call it the show hangover.
Yeah.
You finish sort of birthing this thing on the stage, and then it's suddenly gone, and it's
Yeah.
like you have to deal with that loss.
Yeah.
There was definitely a show hangover, but it was just like I had been programmed to have a certain schedule and have a certain expectations, part of which were like the advice that I got from multiple people who had been through the experience was turn off your brain. Just you whatever they throw at you, just do it,
Yeah.
and just don't think about it, just do, and get from meal to meal to meal, and then the day will be over and it'll be the next day, and then repeat.
Right.
So I had gotten used to not making any decisions for myself and being like, getting up, cleaning, working out, eating, training, bed on repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes, having that schedule, depending on if we were doing a field exercise, we'd have to get up,
But then you came home to Allie.
yeah.
Surprise.
And that was, being away from her was really painful, mainly because like the phone was taken away, and when I put my phone in that lockbox, I didn't, unbeknownst to me, it was in the process of breaking. So when we got our first phone call, my phone wouldn't turn on even if I plugged it in.
Ian,
I didn't know. They took it
but
out.
you must have been just devastated, dude. My heart is aching right now thinking about what that moment must have been like. Oh my God.
A buddy of mine who was sort of my phone savior until we figured out how to get me a new SD card, and Allie mailed me one, and a new phone, and then put my SD card in that and figure out all that bonanza with like the 10 minutes that they give you with your
Right.
phone each time, if that. He let me call and text her from his phone, but she saw that it wasn't my number and she didn't know the number.
Oh, no.
And I think she might have been in the shower at the time when I first called anyway. So like I called like 6 times and and then the phones were being taken away. So I just left her a message. So that missed connection for both of us was like, it was really rough.
Dude.
Um,
Because all you can see is that in that moment. We all have rational beings inside of our brains, but at that moment, rationality and reason are out the window, and all you want to do is talk to your wife.
yeah. Yeah. Cause it's like, it's, they don't ever tell you ahead of time, at least in my experience. They didn't like, there were times later in the cycle when like we won an award amongst the company or something. So like there were, you're going to get a phone call soon. So like we would get notice, but like that
Yeah.
first time we didn't know. But all that is to say that like coming home for those first few weeks when I was first back home, that adjustment was in some ways harder than being away
Mm-hmm.
because we had to like I had been living in a certain lifestyle for 10 weeks, which is long enough to really like get into a habit.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to make decisions. I didn't know like what do you want to watch on TV? What do you want to eat for dinner? What do you want to like I would go into a grocery store and wouldn't know where I was.
Oh,
Like I
yeah.
really it was really like that adjustment coming back was hard for me. And hard for us because it was just like finding my feet again, as Ian.
Just as a quick sidebar,
Yeah.
I'll do a lot of operas about veterans and veterans issues and PTSD. And this what you're talking about now is something that I'm well acquainted with studying. But with guys who have gone for years in
In
the theater
combat
of war and
situation.
combat
Yeah.
situations and coming back. And so you did it for 10 weeks and it was just, you weren't going to die. You're not seeing death all around you. It really just, I mean, it's amazing to me to talk to somebody who's like me, who goes through that program and has a difficult time readjusting to quote unquote civilian life. And you didn't even go through the worst of it.
No, and I
And
would
so these guys
never.
that come back from the theater of war, what they go through, like I can never understand it. You can more to a certain extent than I can. But even you haven't gone through that sort of horror that those guys go through. Fucking A, man. I'm so glad we talked about this because that really, I mean, hearing you talk about that struggle for 10 weeks.
Yeah, it is small potatoes
Yeah.
compared to anyone the actual PTSD because like basic doesn't traumatize you. It's
No, but
not
I'm
like
just
that's
talking about the adjustment,
yeah, it's an
and
adjustment.
they talk about that just not being able to make decisions because every decision is made for you,
Yeah.
you know.
That was the hardest part for me.
When you
Also,
came back, did you go right back? Did you go like as soon as you're done with basic training? Did you have like a week off and then go into, or did you just go straight into like serving?
so technically there's a thing called PTDY leave, which is that the Army band gives you at least. I don't know about other MOSs, but you get to your duty station and you have 10 days of house hunting leave.
Mm-hmm.
But because of COVID, I haven't technically taken that yet, and I've been back for some time now. They gave me a few days, but then I started in processing. So at the band, you need to meet with several different people and in different departments of security, HR. You need to have a few meetings with HR just to get yourself set up. You have to get yourself into the computer networks, all this in processing stuff, which normally takes like maybe a week,
Mm-hmm.
if that. But because they're taking COVID restrictions quite seriously and not and limiting gatherings and allowing most people to work remotely for their extra duties that aren't performing related in the band, this took weeks. It took I only just had my final in processing meetings last week.
Are
And
you
I
performing
graduate
yet?
I performed so every year the Army Chorus does a concert at National Presbyterian Church in DC.
Mm-hmm.
When they were like, we're now accepting, solo repertoire recommendations or suggestions. I was like, "Comfort ye ever valley." That's my Christmas tune. I can roll out of bed and sing some coloratura. And they were like, "Yeah."
Good.
So I
Good.
had a big old solo on my first concert,
Nice.
all in a singer's mask, which was made some of the coloratura a little more challenging, but no, it actually, that I thought it sounded okay. So that's the only performing I've gotten to do in my job.
So now that you're out of it and out of the basic training and sort of into the more, what your life's going to be like for the next 20, 30 years. How many days a week do you work? Do you have the weekends off? Do you travel? What's it like?
Once COVID is all over, like in normal times, the chorus rehearses 3 to 4 times a week as a full ensemble. But then there are, like, you might go to the Pentagon and sing a national anthem for a ceremony as a solo singer.
Hmm.
There might be a community concert that only a small group of the ensemble goes and does, or you go do a solo at. There are any number of gigs that either the entire ensemble or small groups from the ensemble go and do, which adds on to your time. And it might be on a weekend, it might be in the evening, it might be super early in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's the schedule. Besides those sort of that 4-day work week of rehearsals, the schedule could be any number of things.
Yeah.
Depending on what the governments or visit, we might get word that an ambassador is coming to visit, next week. So we have to all get together and learn a piece in their native tongue to present, to welcome them. So things come up all the time.
What strikes me as interesting, that we've talked about this before, about how some people look at what the opera business and what you're doing. Me, for instance, I look at it as a service. I always like to think that what I'm doing is serving the community in some way. But that's not only what we do. I mean, there's a lot of self-edification. There's a lot of ego tied up in it and all that stuff. For me, whenever it's the best, whenever I feel like I'm doing the thing like it's supposed to be done, the magic stuff, it always is in those moments of service. And that can be, doing a piece like it's Opera with a Conscience, like Glory Denied, or Out of Darkness, or something that attacks a really serious problem, cultural problem. But when you do that, or when I got to do Glory Denied, like at Camp Dodge on an active military base, which was fucking amazing, right?
I bet.
But the times that when it feels the best is when you're serving. And listening to you talk just now, I mean, it strikes me that every time you perform now, I mean, not just because you're in the service and what you're doing is serving your country, but every time you perform, it is an act of service, not just to the country, but I mean to whomever you're performing for. It's like you're out there, like you're doing the good thing every time. There's very little ego or self-edification. It doesn't matter if you sing 100 times in a year, or 300 times in a year, or 50 times in a year. You're going to get paid the same. Everything is the same. So there's no more incentive for you to, like, I'm the greatest and I'm so fantastic and pay me more. That's out. It's off the table. So everything you do right now is all about service of your fellow man. And I don't mean in the sense of like serving your country. That's obvious. So I don't know, you only got that when it was the best in opera. And now it's all the time. And that must do a lot for your sort of state of mind and soul and reason for doing it.
I've thought about this, but I've never made that comparison. That you put it so well, and that, like, it's those moments where it's like, when it really is synergistic and everything comes together, that you feel that special sauce. Yeah, it is incredibly gratifying on just a level of just my soul, feeling that I am getting to use my passion and what I've always loved doing, but now really for a greater purpose, of every time I go out and performing, to make the world better through what I do. Whether it's sharing the story of America and being patriotic, and all that, or being a part of this group that's mission is make the world better. Like, that's part of through music. And I have always believed that what we do is so important is a service. I hadn't really thought of it as using the word service, but it is. If you can put beauty into the world, whether it's through song, whether it's through a story, whether it's through visual art, if you can put beauty into the world, you are serving the world, making it better. And I think it's really cool that I get to do what I love to make the world better.
I'm proud of you, Ian. I think it's pretty awesome. The timing worked out well, and it's all fantastic the way it worked out for you. But I think it's really beautiful that you're choosing to use your gifts this way, and
Thanks,
primarily as a service. It speaks. I mean, this is the thing that's been banging around in my head for so long about music as a service and not as just a simple method of self-aggrandizement.
It's so much more, and it can be so much more when you remove the ego from it.
I mean, that's the nature of the military, right? Your ego just goes out the fucking window. See ya. You're just a number now, boy.
Oh, but
is it ever possible that you might be called up to go to like fight a battle or something?
all I will say is that the last time that the U.S. Army Band was sent to a combat zone was World War II.
Okay, so you're pretty good. Okay, just making sure. I was getting worried.
That was the last time that it happened. So if we get called up,
things are bad.
We're in some real trouble.
Yeah, somebody's probably here on our soil anyway.
Yeah,
so it's probably good that we have somebody out there fighting. Hey, is Annie right there? Can I talk to her for a second with both you guys on the screen?
Here she is.
So now you're a military wife. What's that like?
I mean, Ian's been over the fact that he was raised by ex-hippies. I was raised by artists. I've had a lot of cousins and stuff go through the Navy and the Marines and things, but never really anticipated this. So it's taken a little bit of getting used to. But honestly, after Ian first brought it up to me, I ended up convincing him.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that she was the one that first was like, "This is perfect for you."
Yeah, I get to see you every day. Okay, cool.
Well, okay, so he's always hated traveling for gigs and being away from home. He hates the uncertainty of gig life. He thrives on routine and discipline and set expectations.
Things starting to line up.
She knows you really well.
Yeah, I mean, hey,
damn.
When he first brought it up, it was something that he felt like he had to do in order to just get paid and have benefit. But really, the more we both thought about it, the more it really lines up with everything that works best for him in his life. Don't think I super realized how much it was going to impact me, but everyone's been really welcoming and super lovely. I do have some weird feelings about being an Army wife, given that I've got pink hair. I'm generally an artsy weirdo.
Yeah, it gives you some distinction, at least. You'll never be,
definitely.
They're like, oh, it's the cool girl, seeing Ian,
we both are still getting used because it's it is still so new.
Yeah,
it must be kind of surreal to see him decked out in his fatigues or his dress uniform.
It's pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie. And even just basic really brought us together even more. Because having 2.5 months where we couldn't even really speak to each other, especially during a pandemic, it was rough. But we started our relationship long distance, so we're used to writing each other letters. He came back from basic, and that was a hard transition because he was so used to just a totally different culture that I had no context for.
Why are you up at 4:30 in the morning? Ian,
doing push-ups, literally.
It wasn't even that. It was his sense of humor was different. He wasn't used to being allowed to have an opinion or feelings. There was a transition. So I just honestly made him watch a lot of theater and Disney movies to bring the Ian back out.
Yeah.
But after we got used to being around each other again, really we've been better than ever because I think being away from each other in that way just made all of the everyday issues that we might have over dishes or whatever so petty. It just didn't. It does.
We're together and we know that we're on a team, and so let's work as a team. This is the importance of teamwork that I learned. Apply.
And I bet you can clean the shit out of a bathroom right now.
Whoa.
Just amazing. He must be the best bathroom cleaner.
Well, I go too far with the bleach now because we were just bleaching literally every surface. I'm pretty sure my sense of smell is never going to be the same just because I burned so much of it away.
Just pure bleach.
But you're okay, Banshee. Our cat is coughing.
Breaths.
Sorry,
she might have asthma. We don't know.
Yeah.
In any case,
I mean, he's very good with the bleach in the bathrooms now, but the mirrors were somebody else's job, so sometimes those still get forgotten.
I think I cleaned the mirrors maybe once the whole time I was there. I was the dude that was nobody wanted to clean the toilet. The toilets.
Got it. It's on me.
So I always was fine, I'll scrub all that nastiness.
Oh, it must have been. Yeah, I don't imagine they feed you high quality.
Well, I mean, the food, Yeah.
I only eat organic
Stuttering a lot.
food.
It's
Organic paleo, please.
no.
No.
It sounds like, I mean, I know a lot of people in the opera business whose chief complaint is all the things that you talked about. Like, I don't have community. I'm not trying to recruit people. I'm too old to do this shit now.
No, well, we're trying. We have spots open right now, man.
Because I know, especially now during this pandemic, that there are people who are fucking talented that are out there doing like Uber driving and shit, you know, when they could have a regular lifestyle and benefits and healthcare and everything, and have a chance to be able to serve their country and their fellow citizen through art. And so I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, are there jobs available, and how would somebody who listens to this and goes, "Hey, that sounds pretty good. How do I do that?" What would they do?
Well, you can always go to the Army Band website. Just Google United States Army Band or United States Army Chorus, or any of the other ensembles. There's one of the, there's singing sergeants in the Air Force. There's the sea chanters in the Navy. There's the Marines. I don't know what their ensemble is called, but there's also
the Air Force chorus.
There's the Air Force chorus. Like, branches have multiple ensembles. Like the Army chorus is just a guy's chorus. But in the Army Band, we also have Army Voices, which is a mixed group that does lots of pop music.
Yeah, you guys have like a country band and shit too, don't you? Like, it's pretty cool.
Downrange. Downrange is the rock country band that's just friggin' great. So if you play guitar and are into that music, like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
There's also the Soldiers Chorus, which is the big mixed chorus. Just Google it. It's on there. Like, the job openings are always on the website. I know that the Army Chorus, we are in the process of, we just had a meeting about applicants for the second tenor. There's another second tenor opening. So we are in the process of inviting already people to audition for that slot. But it might be on the day that we don't want to take anyone, that no one's right, that no one is right for the position. So that spot might still be open. I know that there's a baritone spot that I believe they're still accepted. Like, don't quote me on it, but I believe they're still accepting applications for it. So people look at these jobs and they might, I don't know if people look down on it as like, for whatever reason, and people continually ask me like, why'd you leave the performing arts? You
didn't.
This was my way of staying in.
Yeah. You still.
And not only that, like, I will say that if you apply for these jobs, specifically in the Army Chorus, like, it is not an end to your performing career. We have guys that do musical theater gigs in town. We have a guy that goes up and does the Met Chorus, well, and there are guys that are still in it that will save up their leave and go use those leave days to do an awesome chorus gig at the Met or in the Washington National Opera Chorus in town. Like, and those are just choral gigs. Like, you can do leading roles if you plan for it.
Yeah.
It is not an end to your opera, musical theater, whatever other sides of your career as a soloist. It is not an end.
Yeah.
In any sense. You just have to plan for it. And
how old is too old?
35 is the cutoff.
Yeah.
I believe
you
that's
barely squeaked in there, buddy.
Like I said, as hard as everything that we've talked about, the difficulties of adjusting and doing basic, I am one of those people that would say, like, even though I haven't really done much of the job yet, like, I would do it all again.
I've never met anybody who did it and was like, "Oh, it's the worst decision I ever made," and usually they're like, "Oh, it's great, I love it." So man, listen, Ian, Alec, thank you guys for coming on the show.
Mike, thank you.
And I really, I wanted to be able to show this to people because I think that people, like you said, often have sort of like, well, they gave up, or it's not good, or I don't get to do. You will sing more doing this shit than you ever did in the professional world because you're doing all the time. There's just so many opportunities. So I wanted people to see that it's not, it's in no way, you're not leaving the performing arts. You're just performing a service as an artist for the rest of for as long as you want to do it in the military for at least 4 years. So
yeah,
I wanted to show that. And I think you were a perfect example of somebody who took a situation like this and you were the perfect spokesman for this move.
I am so thankful for this job. not only because of all the, you know, this, all the security that it has, but just the fact that I get to be part of something bigger, but also never have a dull moment musically. You know,
Yeah.
it's so varied. I get to be a soloist, even though I've never sing another opera role in my career, like I still get to go out there and be like, ah, you know, and have that sort of thrill and that fun, but have that added element of it specifically always being like, this is to enrich the lives of the American people, and beyond. It's not just
Yeah.
the American people, it's the entire.
It's not just a bunch of rich board members or people that drive Rolls Royces, which I think is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. All right, you guys. Well, thank y'all so much for taking the time today.
Thank you so much, Mike.